Howdy, howdy, fellow movie watchers, and welcome back for another edition of the Wisco Movie Watchers Podcast, brought to you by PTE Creative. As always, we are your hosts, Evan Davies, and our favorite Oscars true expert, regardless of what the comment sections from the Cole Sprouse fans say. True Oscars expert, Dylan Davies, in the turtleneck today.
We'll say enthusiast, not expert.
You keep saying that. You know more than virtually any normal human being does or even should about the Oscars.
Yeah, but I'm no Martin Scorsese or anything.
Well, Martin's a different case all entirely. Because,
That's true. He is a weirdo.
Oh, also Marvel films, what are they? They're not stories or they're not films? What is it? I think they're not films.
No, he said they're not cinema.
Oh yeah, they're not cinema. It's like, that's another thing.
I somewhat agree.
Well, I also just love that George Lucas, who's like friends with him, he's like, Marty, anything that's a moving picture, that's cinema. So inherently they are cinema. And I'm like, there you go, George. Thanks, bud.
I'll just say I get his point.
I understand his point. I just think it's poorly made. Because I do understand it, where it's like paint by numbers, half the sequences are already done in pre-production before the director's even hired, and you're like, yeah, I get that. That kind of sucks. But nonetheless, folks, we are here. We're going to be doing another Oscars retrospective, covering 5 years of the Oscars. We are now going to be covering films from 2004 to 2008. And if you've seen our past episodes, you will probably notice that there are going to be 2 to even 4 years that we can be pretty quiet about. And then there's going to be 1 year that we're going to be extremely opinionated about, specifically one side of the desk over here.
Just a little, I changed the format just a little bit, because now I did a little bit more research about, because I was really curious about who is going into these awards really, really confident. Because I went back and looked at because the major awards building up to the Oscars are the Producers Guild, the Golden Globes, the BAFTAs, the SAG Awards, and the Critics' Choice Awards.
Sure.
Those are the major ones. So I went back and looked at all the winners from each year to see who had their dreams just crushed when the Oscars were announced.
I mean, I dig that. I dig that. It's kind of like what we were talking about with Adrian Brody last show of the Oscars, where you're like, no one saw that one coming.
Yeah, and then I also went and watched the video of each person winning, just to see, okay, are there any people who are visibly upset when the winner is announced? Or is there audible gasps from the audience or anything? Just to see. It's curious sometimes to see the audience reception.
Were there any that were clearly pissed?
Well, we'll get to it in 2005.
Because maybe they should be watching more of that Friends episode, where he has to practice whether he wins or not.
I will say, just off the bat, the actresses are way better at hiding. They have the Oscar face down way more than the actors do.
All right, good enough. All right,
they're so much better at hiding the disappointment than the actors are.
There. I mean, shocking. Who would have thought?
Yeah, I know, right?
But
even Saoirse Ronan, who's I don't know, maybe 12 years old when she's nominated in 2007, even she has it down right away.
Yeah, just come on now. All right, we're going to start in 2004 to set the scene for you. 2004, the movies that we're getting at this time, you're starting to see the real modern studio blockbuster kind of take over. Not that didn't already happen, but you're going to see a lot of, hey, we're just going to throw out a bunch of blockbuster shit at you and hope it sticks.
Yeah.
However, you still see some auteur films and things of that nature. Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless Mind. Then you have things that are that mix, like Kill Bill Volume 2. We're getting a lot of good comedies during this time. Anchorman, Shaun of the Dead. Team America World Police is part of this year. Napoleon Dynamite, to really set the scene for our generation. Napoleon Dynamite comes out in 2004.
Ah, yes.
Mean Girls. So you're getting these really cool, almost concept comedies, more so than you're getting, much like we talked about in our Ghostbusters episodes, more concept comedy than just, hey, let's just put stupid situations out there and it happens. But then you're also seeing, again, during this year, you have Kill Bill Volume 2 franchise, technically. Spider-Man 2, Saw starts this year, Shrek comes out with its second film, and then even new stuff that isn't technically a franchise yet, but clearly is going for that. National Treasure, SpongeBob SquarePants movie, their Born Supremacy is another sequel coming out. So this is clearly we're making franchises. So it's a very interesting thing to see.
On that SpongeBob note, I have a note on that on the Oscars, actually.
Interesting.
From this book. I didn't actually write it down because I didn't think it would come up. But so it says Robin Williams took the stage with his mouth taped shut to protest fundamental zealots who accused SpongeBob of promoting the homosexual agenda. But most of it was cut out because that was after the whole halftime show debacle. So a lot of it was cut out of the show.
Huh.
But yeah, so he was protesting against people who said that SpongeBob was promoting the gay agenda.
Just to make it clear, because even the way you said it, I understand every word you said, and I'm still like, wait, hold on, let's process quick. Robin Williams is protesting douchebags who are against SpongeBob because they think SpongeBob is gay and pushing the gay agenda. Okay.
Yes.
All right, more reason to like Robin Williams.
Yeah, Robin Williams is not saying SpongeBob is gay and he's pushing the agenda.
Yeah,
no.
That's not what he is saying.
He's protesting against that, yeah.
Wonderful. But that is the year.
I definitely did not think that was going to come up.
Yeah, it was more so I just knew that was oddly... Oh, I forgot one movie that is certainly another cultural touchstone of the time. Not necessarily for a good thing inherently, but in some people's opinion, a very good thing. And that is The Passion of the Christ, is also released in 2004, which is one of the biggest movies of the year. So, and it's through an independent distributor as well. So
yeah, I believe it was still in the top 10 of highest grossing R-rated movies ever.
Interesting. I mean, that would make sense, but I mean, to be fair,
probably not anymore, but it was for a long, long time.
I was gonna say it doesn't help that there are 3 Deadpool movies in that category now. So I guarantee.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So we're getting more of that, and Logan's in the R-rated category. So we're starting to see the big franchise superhero film take that genre.
Oh, I forgot about that.
But but it doesn't mean it's not inherently, doesn't take away from the success of that film. That film was wildly controversial through. I mean, talk about presenting agenda. You know, if we're going to talk about agendas, this is the turn of this is the turn of Mel Gibson in popular culture, where he was already starting to get a little bit of flack, but this is where he's like, he's all out. I am a Christian, almost zealot, and I am going to really bring to you the suffering of Christ and try to make everyone feel bad that Christ suffered this way. And it goes away from a picture of faith almost to, I'm going to try to shove my faith down your throat almost in some way, shape, or form, because it's wildly popular, obviously, with one major group of people for obvious reasons.
Well, I think it's funny that like any like almost true depiction of what's actually in the Bible, like obviously there's like really graphic stuff in the Bible.
Yeah.
And if you actually show that as it is, like they did in that movie, or with Martin Scorsese had a whole controversy about The Last Temptation of Christ as well.
Yeah.
Like there's always this big uproar about it for some reason.
Right.
And it's just curious.
And in most ways, the best thing to come out of Passion of the Christ is the South Park episode about Passion of the Christ. So, like most things in popular
I don't know
culture.
if I've seen that
one. It's tremendous. Hartman is holding essentially Nazi rallies because of his passion for the Passion of the Christ, and he's telling all the South Park townsfolk that like Nazi chants are what is it, Judaic or Aramaic, whatever language that was used in the film, saying like, "Oh no, it's a chant from this time," and everyone's like, "Oh really?" So they're like marching the streets to these chants that they're like, "Oh, we're celebrating Christ," and it's Cartman trying to like take over the town, essentially.
That sounds about right.
It's tremendous because it's done with that South Park fuck you attitude that is so good in every way, shape, or form that you have to love.
Yeah, that's good.
I fucking love that episode so.
All right. So to get into it, the actual nominees for Best Picture, you have the winner is $1 Million Baby. The other four nominees: The Aviator, Finding Neverland, Ray, and Sideways. Director Clint Eastwood for $1 Million Baby. Actor Jamie Foxx for Ray. Actress Hilary Swank for $1 Million Baby. Supporting actor Morgan Freeman for $1 Million Baby. And supporting actress Cate Blanchett for The Aviator.
All right, so do we want to start with Big Six and then go kind of other categories, or do we want to go other categories into Big Six?
We'll do any technical changes you want to make?
So technical changes, just inherently, I would say this. I only have 2 technical changes. I don't understand the Polar Express not getting a nomination. I understand if it doesn't win, but I think the Polar Express is just such a weird, unique form of animation that's done very well. This also came out in 2004. That I think that
just probably, for animated feature.
Yeah, just for an animated film, I think that probably deserves a nomination. And I think this is the first time that this franchise is shown to be a little bit more gritty. I could see a nomination for adapted screenplay for Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. I think that's the first time you really get to see not Rowling and the way she writes those books. They're meant to evolve with the audience, which is the whole beauty of that book series, regardless of the human being behind them. But Prisoner of Azkaban is that turn where you still have all that wonderful young magic to it, but you're just starting to get more of those adult themes. I think the movie really hits that well, and you're starting to see that, and I could see a nomination for adapted screenplay. I'm not sure if it deserves a win, but a nomination I think could be worthwhile.
Hey, I'd be perfectly fine with that.
Wow, the Harry Potter fan? No way.
Yeah. Steve Kloves, I don't think gets enough credit for what he does with those movies in terms of screenplay. Because honestly, a lot of those movies are at times radically different than the books.
Yeah.
And Prisoner of Azkaban actually is pretty different. Well, it's actually pretty different in terms of plotting, though.
True.
Like, in terms of, like, the storyline and where it goes, it's true to it.
Yeah.
But, like, the actual way it gets there is very different.
Yeah.
At times. Yeah, both my technical changes also have to do with Prisoner of Azkaban.
Shocking.
I would have went the Prisoner of Azkaban score, John Williams, over the Finding Neverland score.
Huh?
I just rewatched Prisoner of Azkaban on Halloween.
Okay, good time.
And that's actually my favorite score of all the Harry Potter movies. I think it's by far the most creative from all of them. And then I also wish it would have gotten a nomination for cinematography.
It does have some really cool cinematography in it. That's right, it does.
Yeah, like the camera work in that with Alfonso Cuarón is just like so creative and fun and like energetic.
Yeah, I will say it's another.
And when you compare it to the first 2 movies with
Chris Columbus, I should say.
Yeah, thank you. yeah, when you compare those two, it's like so radically different.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's part of the reason why when Prisoner of Azkaban comes out, a lot of people, they don't turn on the franchise, but a lot of the older folk that go see the first two movies with their families, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, what a fun family experience." Not understanding the trajectory of books and everything. The third one, it's radically different. They're getting to see,
Yeah.
you're seeing teenagers come out to play, and you're seeing the cinematography really honing in on some of the darker themes in that story. And you're right. It's a great example bringing energy through cinematography. I do appreciate that.
Yeah, I kind of forgot how good that movie fucking was. It's so good.
I would say it's still, I think it's probably my second favorite of the franchise. But it's still it's by far one of the two best in my. I think the best is actually Deathly Hallows Part 1. I know it's controversial to some people.
Whoa.
Yep.
That is highly controversial.
Oh, I know. But that's why I like it so much. That's why I think it's great, because it's just it's it's the first time, even with all the crazy dark shit that happens in those books and those movies, it's the first time you really feel the struggle. You really feel the goddamn, life can really suck with this right now. And I love that. I think that's great.
They no longer feel like kids, yeah.
Yeah, they feel like they are now thrown into this war that they never wanted. I adore that piece of. I think Deathly Hallows Part 1 is by far the best. And then I would say it's Prisoner of Azkaban. But I know that's a wild, controversial take, so.
So, jumping into the acting categories, just to go off the guild, the wins before the Oscars.
Sure.
Jamie Foxx swept everything. Critics, BAFTAs, Golden Globes, and SAG. Got every single win he could. Hilary Swank won everything except the BAFTA. The supporting actress and supporting actor races were actually up for grabs because it was really a three-way chase in both categories. It was Thomas Hayden Church won a Critics' Choice Award. Clive Owen won a BAFTA and a Golden Globe. And then you had Morgan Freeman winning the SAG Award.
What did Clive Owen win for? Is that Children of Men?
No, it was Closer.
Okay.
That him and Natalie Portman and I can't remember who else was in that.
I always liked Clive Owen.
I don't know. But I don't think I've seen that movie, honestly.
Yeah, I've never seen that movie. I like Clive Owen and what I've seen him in. It's just I've seen him in very few things.
Yeah, I think I've only seen him in Children of Men.
I was gonna say,
which I love.
I loved. Talk about a movie for the times. Shoot 'Em Up, 2006. Loved that movie at the time because it was just wild and ridiculous, and I fucking loved that. Which is also why I love Monica Bellucci. So when everyone fell in love with her in Beetlejuice, I was like, I've been in love with her for 20 years. Shut up! Like, she's great.
And then supporting actress race, you had Virginia Madsen winning the Critics' Choice Award. You had Natalie Portman winning a Golden Globe, and then Cate Blanchett winning the SAG and BAFTA award. So both categories completely up for grabs, really.
I like it when it's that varied, unless it's just such a.
So do I.
Unless it is such a straightforward, no one else can win this because no one else should win this. I don't ever like it when it's just, chalk. You know, it's just, it makes it far more interesting. I think it brings not inherently credibility, but I think it brings more discussion to the criticism of films in both good and bad ways. And I think it really brings to light that there's, when you do find something extremely good, that doesn't inherently mean it's better than everything else, and I appreciate.
Yeah. Well, I think it lends more credence to the Oscars
Yes.
Because it's just like, okay, it's not a stapled on thing of like, okay, it's obvious this person's going to win. Because like there's always that thing like, if Meryl Streep's nominated, she's probably gonna win.
Right.
But like, it's not always that easy, and that's a good thing.
Right. I mean, it's similar to, we have one of those obvious no one else can win at the end of this show. It's just
true.
So,
well, we just had one with Jamie Foxx, really,
right?
Because he won literally every single award.
Right. So the only things I would
like, it'd be a huge upset if he didn't win.
Right. I have one adjustment for nomination. I don't know who I would take out because I think Ray is the only one the nominees that you've said, I think Ray's the only one I even know most of the performance of. I would have liked to see a nomination for Jim Carrey in Eternal Sunshine for the Spotless Mind. I think he's phenomenal in
that. That's one nomination I also had down. I actually had two changes I would have made. You've never seen The Aviator?
I've seen bits and pieces of the Aviator, but it's not. That was during that time where it just felt like Leo DiCaprio just kind of did whatever Martin Scorsese was doing, and it wasn't
pretty much.
It wasn't. I wasn't in that wheelhouse. I definitely did find this. It's something to really showcase one's bias in film and to try to get over that as much as possible. It is amazing to me, 70s, 80s, 90s, and even before that, if someone says this is a great award-winning film, I'm like super open to it because it's before my time and I don't know. This was the first time when we were writing these, when I was writing the lists and doing the, year of kind of stuff to prepare, that I was like, oh wow, I really don't have an interest in any of watching most of these movies. And it's because I lived through them. And so it was like,
sure.
And this was when I was first starting to get into like, oh, I'd like to go, like what 13-year-old says for Christmas, I'd like to go buy the Godfather box set. Like that's who I was. So I was starting to get into film in that way. But a lot of these Oscar movies, I was just like, who fucking cares? And now I have to like challenge myself to be like, I haven't watched a lot of this stuff. I don't want to give opinions on stuff that I haven't.
Yeah, I've been meaning to rewatch The Aviator lately because I just watched a interview between Leo and Scorsese where they talk about it. So I think I'm gonna watch it in the next couple weeks.
Okay.
But I remember really liking it. Cate Blanchett actually is the first person to win an Oscar for portraying an Oscar winner because she's playing Katharine Hepburn in it.
Fun. I mean, Cate Blanchett's great in everything, so I assume.
Yeah. It's a fun performance. I do remember that. Yeah, but that's actually one of the changes I made. I would have picked Regina King, who wasn't even nominated, for Ray. I love Ray more than most people, I think.
Yes, that's very true. You've loved that since it came out.
Because it's actually going to be replaced in the Best Picture category later. But so I would have picked her, and then the other change I would have made was Best Director. I would have went Scorsese over Clint Eastwood, just because I just don't love $1 Million Baby that much. I think it's fairly mediocre.
Clint Eastwood, ironically, is kind of the director Meryl Streep. It seems to me, if Clint Eastwood directs a movie, it's going to get nominated no matter what, even if it deserves to or not. And then he's most likely going to get the push to win because it's Clint Eastwood. But what about the movie? Well, it's Clint Eastwood. It's almost like whereas there's multiple times looking through this that like Spielberg gets nominated and Spielberg doesn't win. And you would think it'd be the opposite. Well, Spielberg has to win, and it's not the case.
Yeah. Just on that, when they actually announce the videos that I watched, when Morgan Freeman gets announced, obviously, huge cheer because it's his first Oscar that he ever won.
Yeah.
So everyone's like going crazy. Everyone gives him a standing ovation. He has to wait to speak because everyone's cheering so much. Alan Alda, he kind of looks like he believes he could win, but then even he's like, okay, yeah, it's Morgan Freeman, I get it.
Yeah.
And
which I was surprised to see he even got a nomination, because I just forgot Alan Alda did stuff during this time.
He's not really in many movies.
Yeah.
Supporting actress I wrote down, that's a hard one to read because literally no one looked confident in the video.
Which is good. That's a good thing.
Yeah. And then no one actually seems over the moon about Cate Blanchett winning. And I wrote, even Cate Blanchett doesn't look like incredibly happy about winning.
Would you say that's really a strong weird category, or would you say it's a weak category? Where it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, they had to. It's category, or it's like, no, it's really strong performances. It's just no one really outshines any of it.
I need to look at the other two. Okay, because I haven't seen Closer, and I haven't seen Laura Linney is nominated for Kinsey, which I also haven't seen.
Okay.
I really like Virginia Madsen in Sideways. I think that's a great performance. And then the other nominee is, I don't know who this is actually, Sophie Okoneita from Hotel Rwanda, which I do remember really liking that movie.
Oh, film.
But I don't remember her performance.
Yeah.
So it sounds like a pretty good category, but what I wrote down is like Cate Blanchett is just incredibly composed. So it's like it's just her as a person.
Because she's our beloved Lady Galadriel, and we love her.
Yeah, and then Best Actress. That's when I wrote down like, okay, the girls are just better at the Oscar face than the guys are. Also, I wrote down that this weird thing that I noticed. Hilary Swank had this weird mirror with Jodie Foster, because Jodie Foster wins 2 Oscars in 3 or 4 years. She wins in '88 for The Accused, where she plays a survivor of rape, and then 3 years later she plays, I'm blanking on her name, in
Clarice.
Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, it's Clarice Starling, FBI agent.
Yeah, Starling, thank you. And then Hilary Swank wins in '99, where she plays a trans character who, well, actually, I think it's based on a true story. It's like a really tragic story of a trans person. And then 5 years later, she wins for like a strong female character who's a boxer. And she's actually the first person to win an Oscar for playing a boxer, male or female.
That's fun.
So it's like this weird, like,
justice.
It's this weird, like, mirror of in decades where, like, you have 2 people who I'd actually would compare, like Jodie Foster and Hilary Swank, because they're like not the most conventional of actresses, you would say.
They also just disappear for large parts of their careers.
True.
Where they just, and then like 5 to 10 years later, they just pop up in something, and everyone's like, "Hey, you remember that they're good?" You just like you forget about it because they just kind of like. I remember finding out about Silence of the Lambs and loving it the first time I watched it.
Yeah.
And just being like, why doesn't Jodie Foster do stuff? She just like didn't do stuff during that part of her career. And then I don't think I even saw her, not even in a movie, around movies until like the early 10s. And I was just like, where have you been? What are you doing? Like,
yeah. It is crazy.
And Hilary Swank has a similar thing, because didn't she just kind of like make a pseudo comeback like a couple years ago, but she like disappeared almost for years? It's just strange.
Just making sure. Oh, well, actually, I guess, no, Robert De Niro did win for Raging Bull, which part of that movie is a boxing movie, so I guess partial win.
Partial win. Well, also,
but it's not it's not like a full-blown boxing movie.
But to illustrate the point, I mean, it's sad, but Hilary Swank's biggest thing in pop culture for over a decade is the debate about if she's attractive or not in The Office. That's wild. because she's a 2-time Academy Award winner, and she's a phenomenal actress.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
But it's one of the biggest things from the early Office, where there's a whole debate: is she hot or not? And it's just like an office-wide debate, and they just get in like in typical Office fashion from the U.S. Office. Just not that it's different from the UK, but nonetheless, the whole office just stops working, and they just divide into teams and yell at each other. Hilary Swank, is she hot or not? And they just keep going, and then it ends with Michael Scott. He's been doing his own storyline the whole day. He just walks in the office like it's a dead tie, and then Hilary Swank, he just walks by. Oh, she's hot, and then just like walks away, and everyone's just like, whatever team you're on, cheers or boos. But sadly, that's her biggest claim to fame for like a decade because of the prominence of that show.
Yeah, that's a shame because she like. I don't love $1 Million Baby, but I just recently watched Boys Don't Cry, which she won her first Oscar for.
Yeah.
Probably like 3 months ago. And that movie, like, it was devastating, her performance in that. It is really, really tragic. And it's like, I would argue it's like one of the best performances of the decade. So it is kind of a shame. And I don't love Hilary Swank that much. So that's saying something.
Yeah, I would say it says a lot when someone can give a performance like that. It's just weird. I'm so glad you brought up the mirror, because like the two of them, it's the exact same thing. They just like disappear for giant swaths of time. And then someone's like, no, look at this one movie that they did during the time. You're like, shut up. It doesn't count. Like, I know Jodie Foster did some rando thing like in the like 2014 era, but she's like, it's the first thing she does in like a long time out of nowhere, and you're just like,
I know she just did that True Detective season, which I didn't watch yet, but that's the only thing I can think of in the past 5 years.
Well, I know she's been more into the director and producer roles later in her career, because it's not as if Jodie Foster didn't have a full fucking career by the time she was in her 30s. Like, she had a full career, but nonetheless, it was just wild when you brought it up. I was like, fuck yeah, that's right. It's just strange, the mirroring and everything, that they're very similar paths. It's very interesting, to say the least.
And then Best Actor, Clint Eastwood looks visibly pissed off when Jamie Foxx gets announced. It's really funny because he looks like he's like, you young motherfucker, this was like my last chance at winning an acting award, because he had already won for directing and Best Picture in '92 for Unforgiven. So he's like, this was my last chance, you asshole.
Yeah, and then he has Gran Torino, so
yeah.
Does he win for Gran Torino? Course, I don't know if he does, but
no, he's not even nominated. But then, of course, the Oscar producers have to cut immediately to black people to show how diverse they are when Jamie Foxx wins. It's just like, come on. It is so obvious what you're doing. I hate that shit.
Just, I mean, part of it is the recognition of your peers, right? Instead of trying to prop up yourself, prop up the industry, prop up the person winning, prop up the people who deserve it. And not that the people that they showed don't deserve it. It's they're trying to get the goodwill, not those people. You know, like, does that make sense? Yeah. And that's certainly something. Yeah, it's obnoxious when that happens. Oscar, yeah, Clint Eastwood,
and then
it feels like Clint Eastwood feels like he just wins. He should win everything he does, because that's kind of Clint Eastwood's vibe for the later parts of his career.
Yeah. Well, I will say, like, the thing I wrote down about when he wins Best Director this year, I have 2 tidbits. He brought his mom to the Oscars in '92, and she's 84 years old then. And he brought his mom again in '04, and she's 94. So that's kind of cool.
Good on
as
him.
a date. And then the other thing I wrote down is a surprisingly charismatic person. So he, like, I always think of him as like the character he always plays, you know?
Yeah.
But he is different than that. He is surprisingly charismatic.
I mean, there's a reason that he is who he is. It's because most of the time when you talk about Clint Eastwood, no one brings up like one role, right? He's kind of the last vestige of like the John Wayne, where Clint Eastwood plays Clint Eastwood.
Well, that's what people always say. But then, like when you actually see him in interviews or giving that speech, I was like, oh, he's not actually like that.
Oh yeah, I know, but he's just like that was the persona that was built. He's one of those.
Yes, the persona. Yeah,
that was one. I mean, shit. To the point where the fucking canyon in Back to the Future 3 is named after him because, like, well, Clint Eastwood. Western. Let's talk about Clint Eastwood. It's who's Marty? He's Clint Eastwood. Because it's all he fucking knows. It's the persona that was built that he would consciously built for himself, and the studio system, specifically Warner Brothers, really fucking built for Clint Eastwood. But yeah, I mean, I think he's certainly super talented. I don't want this to come off as though Clint Eastwood sucks or anything. It's just certainly it seems the vibe that there is a lot of his more recent work in the last 15 to 20 years. It feels very much like, motherfucker, I'm Clint Eastwood and I made this. Ergo, it's great because I did it, not because of the merit of what it actually is.
It's been a lot. Yeah, and it's been very mediocre work, honestly. Because, like, you have, like, Hereafter with Matt Damon, you have J. Edgar. Like, those are not good films,
right?
Honestly. They're, like, eh.
Well, and that's the thing, is he does a lot of movies that some consider to even be, like, propaganda films half the time. And all due respect, because it's a good movie, regardless of what people want to say. I don't love the subject character, and I don't love kind of the messaging behind it. But American Sniper is a good fucking movie.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that movie.
Straight up. But it feels very much like, hey, support America's military men. And, we need to appreciate them more. And it's a little more of like, or he always does like horror of war shit. And it's just eventually you're just like, okay.
Well, his last great film was Letters from Iwo Jima, which was, at this point, 17 years ago. So, I mean, it's been a while.
Yeah, that's the thing. Great film. Like, I think Gran Torino is really good, but it's not the greatest thing I've ever found.
Yeah. So jumping into picture, do you have any changes?
I would have liked to see 2 nominations. I don't know who I take out, though, because I only know the conjecture of some people at the time, meaning the adults I was around.
Which ones have you seen?
Go over the nominees again.
$1 Million Baby,
Nope.
The Aviator,
Nope.
Finding Neverland,
Nope.
Ray, and Sideways.
I've seen most of Ray. I can't even say I've seen a full rendition of any film. Sideways specifically just looks like, okay. I don't know if I'd like it.
I'm telling you right now, you would love Sideways.
Which is so interesting because the way it's marketed, I'm just like, I'm not interested.
And I'm not saying you would like it. I'm saying you would probably love it.
Huh. Maybe one day we'll have to check.
It's great. I think Abby would love it too.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll have to make a little movie night out of it. The 2 that I love from this year that I think are Oscar-worthy nominations, I would have liked to see a nomination for Eternal Sunshine. I think that's a tremendous film. And
one I have down, yep.
And I do think Life Aquatic is worthy of that distinction. I think Life Aquatic is phenomenal.
I haven't seen that in a long, long time, so I can't say I think I watched that when I was like 15 too, so I barely remember that movie.
Life Aquatic is one of those that Life Aquatic is so weird and unique, interesting, and different. And that's not that his other films aren't great, because I enjoy them, but that's the turn where Wes Anderson goes from, hey, I'm Wes Anderson, I make these quirky films, to, hey, I'm Wes Anderson, I make these quirky films, and they're really good and worthy of your fucking merit at all times from a critical sense, not just, hey, the people who are going to like them are going to like them, the people who don't, okay.
Yeah, so I wrote down 2 changes I would have made. One was Eternal Sunshine. I would have taken out Finding Neverland, and I would have taken out Ray. I think Ray is a good movie, but I think it's mostly just built off the performance of Jamie Foxx, really. It's mostly about that performance.
Okay.
So I would have put in Eternal Sunshine, and then I would have put in. Have you ever seen Downfall? It's a German movie about Hitler in the bunker
No.
in the last like 2 weeks of the war.
I'm sure I've seen clips of it, because isn't the clip from that movie like pretty prevalent in a bunch of stuff?
Yes, the famous movie where it's like screaming. Yeah.
Yeah, like everyone knows clips of that movie, but I don't think anyone's actually.
Yes.
I wouldn't say 99% of the people have watched that movie. They've just watched a rendition of it for meme culture movie. of that clip.
Yeah, it's a great movie. Actually, that's one thing I forgot to shout out is Bruno Ganz, who plays Hitler in that movie. That's a great performance and probably should have been nominated, but very rarely do foreign films get nominated for performances.
Also, they just had some controversy with some Nazis a couple years ago. Probably just like,
yeah,
let's just not. It's just not.
I mean, that's a pretty nuanced performance, so I would have been okay with it.
Nonetheless.
Also, I forgot to give a shout out for one performance that I would have liked to get seen just as a nomination. It's going to be kind of a joke, but Ben Stiller in Dodgeball. Comedies just never get recognized, so it's like
Ben Stiller's great in Dodgeball. Nice. I do love Dodgeball.
Yeah, he is. There are performances where you can say like, okay, yeah, that would have been cool to see.
Yeah, it would have been fun, and I think he gives a great performance. But you're right, nothing in a comedy movie is ever going to be
ever.
It has to be a dramedy to ever get a performance recognition.
Yes. Like the only we'll talk about one later with Robert Downey Jr., but
yeah,
that's as close as you get, really.
Right, exactly. But I mean, overall, I think that's pretty good.
What's your favorite movie of the year?
Oh, you already know it. Dodgeball was a very, very close competitor, but we're talking about one of my favorite comedies of all time. We're talking about Anchorman: Legend of Ron Burgundy. Come on now. That newscaster fight?
Actually, you know what? Will Ferrell may be nominated too. Best actor, maybe. You could argue.
Obviously, the best actor of that year, ironically enough, Jon Heder is Napoleon Dynamite. Could see it.
That would have been cool.
If I'm giving you a joke answer,
I don't think that movie caught on until like 2 years after.
No, it was most popular in our age group a year after it came out. Because I remember I had the vote for Pedro's shirt in the 8th grade, and that was 2005 to 2006 for me. And that's one of those movies that is now. It should be known almost as a cult movie, but it's not, because our entire generation knows it and has an opinion of it, and most are just like, it's not that great. I fucking love Napoleon Dynamite.
Something tells me the Academy voters that nominated Finding Neverland didn't watch Napoleon Dynamite.
Also, I think we should give an acting nomination to the clearly stuffed dog that Jack Black kicks off the bridge in Anchorman.
Yeah. Maybe they should add a best cameo category.
I'm going to be honest. That'd be really fun. That'd be really, really fun. If there's a cameo category.
They would never do it because it's like too much of a shtick, but it would be cool.
Oh, especially, come on now. Some of these cameos coming out now, or you're just like, no fucking way. It's fun and it's enjoyable.
Yeah.
But yeah, what is your favorite film?
Oh, it's Prisoner of Azkaban.
Yeah, I was gonna
Easy.
say. I assumed other high contention here, uh, for the year specifically. Shaun of the Dead. I can always fuck with Shaun of the Dead. I do really like Life Aquatic. Dodgeball is certainly in that discussion. And then I only watched it for the first time on Halloween just a couple days ago as of recording this. Howl's Moving Castle, which doesn't get recognized by the Oscars till the next year because it's only released by Disney again. It's fucking Spirited Away too, where they don't recognize it in the correct year. But Howl's Moving Castle, I really enjoyed Howl's Moving Castle. And there's a phenomenal voice cast that I was not expecting.
They have a weird... Yeah, they have all their Miyazaki movies. Spirited Away and Howl's Moving. Yeah.
And it doesn't make sense because there's other foreign films that do the same fucking thing.
But maybe Disney's being strategic about it. Maybe that's their...
It's the only strategy I can think of, because why wouldn't we give some extra credit to the biggest fucking film studio on the planet?
I'm just trying to think of, maybe they don't want to compete against themselves, you know?
Which would be stupid, but I would love if one year a studio just made like 5 movies that were great, and they just said, this is our category. Have at it.
Can't even find animated movie. Where is it? I mean, The Incredibles won that 2004, so maybe that was their thinking. Maybe.
I mean, Incredibles is a phenomenal movie. I don't know what I would pick.
I'm actually surprised. I'm surprised you didn't put that in Best Picture, honestly.
It is odd how much Incredibles flies under the radar for me and most people. Incredible, so for instance, I talked about this with you, and I showed a bit to you when I just saw you a couple weeks ago in person, where the Survival series, for Parts Fun Known, and I can't remember the rest of their channels, but I love that YouTube series. And everybody who talks about it, you had to name every Pixar movie. Like, okay.
Yep.
Even then, with people that are movie critics and go to press screenings, all this shit, even they're like, oh fuck, I forgot The Incredibles. And it is so crazy how much that movie flies under the radar, and yet it is such a good...
It's funny, I don't think I love it as much as everyone else. I do really like it, but
I would be in the same boat.
I wouldn't put it in my top 5 of Pixar.
I'd have to look at the rest of Pixar, but there's a lot of modern Pixar that I really love, because I'm all for the woke culture Pixar that the incels like to hate on. I think it's great what they're doing, because oh my god, whoa, a white boy isn't their character, or a toy isn't their main character. Whoa, crazy. But nonetheless, this has been a good year for 2004 is a pretty decent year. I'm excited to see what your opinions are overall. I'm excited to see what your opinions are for the next year when we come back for 2005.